This video is sponsored by Stack Audio, manufacturers of the Orva speaker and equipment isolation feet used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and other products, please click the link in the description. This is my first video of 2025. Wow, where does the time go? The older I get, the quicker time seems to pass. Anyway, if you're watching this close to its time of release, Happy New Year. I'm guessing many of you will be familiar with ATC speakers. Their range of active and passive speakers are used by many of the world's leading recording engineers and musicians. Over 50 years, ATC has built a reputation as one of the most respected brands in pro audio and hi-fi. ATC are an engineering-led company developing their drivers in-house. The quality of those drivers lays the foundation for their success. It's one reason why many industry professionals and seasoned audiophiles regard ATC as audio aristocracy. But just how good are ATC speakers? I've reviewed a number of them from their entry range. The standout model for me are the SCM19s that retail for £2,595 a pair. They're the only speakers in the entry series to feature a premium ATC SL spec driver, and that's why I think they sound even cleaner than the larger and more expensive SCM40s that have no SL drivers. It's been more than a while since I reviewed the 19s, but I reckon they probably have the most natural and resolving sounding mid-range of any speakers I've encountered below £3,000. They're even a whisker better than my Proact Response 1 SCs in that regard. But there are three speakers that I reviewed in 2024 that are worth mentioning here because they provide a benchmark when it comes to overall performance. The £1,800 Quad Revela ones are the best modern speakers I've reviewed below £3,000 so far. They offer deeper bass and more open highs than the ATCs, but even they can't quite deliver the authenticity with vocals and acoustic instruments of the SCM19s. You have to step up to £5,000 and the Alta audio Alessas to get noticeably better performance. Deep, clean bass, glorious open mids, ethereal highs, wonderful sound staging and imaging. The Kerr acoustic K300 Mark IIIs do very similar things to the Alessas, but yet again, performance doesn't come cheap. The K300 Mark IIIs are £6,395. So I thought it's time to up the ante and see what ATC can offer to compete with those standard bearers. I'm looking at their flagship two-way stand mounts, the SCM20s. Let's see how I got on. The 20-litre internal volume of the ATC SCM20s translates to external cabinet dimensions of 440 by 239 by 326 millimeters, or 17.3 by 9.4 by 12.8 inches. These are speakers that feel like they could pass for military use, weighing 18 kilograms or 40 pounds each. The SCM20s retail for £3,390 a pair and come in numerous painted and real wood finishes. This is the rosewood. The protruding front baffle and visible Allen key screws assert a lack of frivolity about the industrial design, in keeping with ATC's engineering-led ethos. Bass and mid-range duties are handled by an ATC 150mm 6-inch soft dome driver. It's the same SL driver found in the more affordable SCM19s. I'll talk more about the specifics of the design in the next section. The tweeter, also made in-house by ATC, is a unit based around a 25mm 1-inch soft dome. This is the higher S-spec version of the transducer found in the SCM19s and is deployed all the way up to the £50,000 active ATC SCM150s. The rear confirms that this is indeed a sealed box, there's no port. The two sets of speaker binding posts are again better quality than those found on the SCM19s. ATC recommend amplifiers capable of delivering at least 75 watts per channel, so I can see some people by amping. It may be useful for me to summarise what you get for your £1,400 extra stepping from the SCM19s to the 20s. Well, you get a more substantial cabinet, the front baffle is double layered, better quality speaker binding posts, better quality crossover components, and a higher spec tweeter. All of that is important, but I'm going to focus on the drivers here. That's what ATC are known for, and that's what I think they do particularly well. The SL midwoofer has a massive motor structure weighing 9 kilograms. It's made from their proprietary superlinear magnetic material with a high magnetic permeability, a high magnetic saturation point, and low electrical conductivity to reduce eddy currents. What that means is lower non-linear distortions compared to drivers that use traditional ferrous magnets. In particular, third harmonic distortion is lowered by as much as 15 decibels, according to ATC. ATC drivers use underhung voice coils with a short coil in a long gap, as opposed to most drivers that have overhung voice coils with the coil sticking out of the gap. An underhung coil requires a much larger motor structure to achieve the same excursion, but always operates within the linear part of the magnetic field. The most famous of all ATC drivers is the 3-inch dome mid-range unit that founder Billy Woodman first developed in 1976. Even though the SCM20 is a two-way speaker, believe it or not, a variant of that driver is incorporated. Instead of a dust cap, the SL driver has a 3-inch dome mid-range mounted in the center of the woofer. It mechanically decouples itself from the woofer at higher frequencies, acting like a dual concentric driver, but without the need for electrical crossover components that alter phase and waste energy. It's clever stuff, complex to manufacture and expensive. The tweeter isn't entirely conventional either. It's a dual suspension design. The second suspension components in the system reduce rocking modes to give a more pistonic-like motion. Because there's less rocking, there's less distortion and less wasted energy, it allows ATC to produce a tweeter that has high SPL capabilities but without the need for ferrofluid cooling. Ferrofluids tend to dry out over time, adversely affecting performance. The entire classic range gets the SH76S tweeter. It has a more powerful magnet structure than the non-S version found on the entry range of ATC speakers, producing 2.1 Tesla of magnetic flux, as opposed to 1.4 Tesla from the standard tweeter. The mid-range on the ATC SCM20s is something special, superbly articulate and natural. With vocals and acoustic instruments, you get the sense of the performers being there in the room with you in a much more realistic way than I've encountered before. The £5,000 Alta audio Alyssas come very close, but there's just ever so slightly more texture and tone to the way the SCM20s deliver the mid-range. The Alyssas literally hit back with better bass performance though. It all comes down to engineering. The Alyssas dig down to 32 Hz thanks to a hybrid transmission line bass loading, and that bass is clean as well as deep. The SCM20s, well, they also have clean bass, but they're minus 6 dB down at 55 Hz. Some mini monitors almost extend down as far as that. The reason is, despite them having a similar size enclosure to the Alyssas, these are a sealed box design. Adding a subwoofer is essential in my book. Not many musical instruments play down to the 30s, but there's plenty of musical information between 40 and 60 Hz. My Revela T7X provided some welcome bass weight and a little extra lower mid warmth. The top end from the SCM20s is about as good as I've heard from a soft dome tweeter. I suspect the Dali Epicon 2s might be a little bit more open, but it'll be close. They're both bettered by the best speakers I've reviewed with ribbon tweeters, but then ribbon tweeters do have a technical advantage. A ribbon is typically 50 times lighter than a soft dome. That's why the Kerr Acoustic K300 Mark IIIs, like the Alta Audio Alyssas, will produce area highs. It's noticeable with things like the decay of cymbal hits and when drummers use subtle brushing techniques. The £1,800 quad Revela ones have a ribbon tweeter that draws more attention to itself than the Alyssas and the K300s. I wouldn't call the Revelas bright, just a touch lively. The ATC SCM20s have a top end that's more refined and forgiving than the quads, but with a roll-off that veers towards the dark side. Not excessively, but it is present. The quad Revela ones are my reference speakers below £3,000. They're great value, but they don't have the clarity, texture and tone of the ATCs. The Revela ones will dig down to a useful 40 Hz, but I was able to achieve similar levels of bass fidelity and even greater bass depth by adding my Revela T7X to the SCM20s. I'm sure people are bound to ask how the SCM20s compare sonically to the SCM19s that I reviewed. I can't believe it, but that was back in 2020 when I first started this channel, so I can only draw conclusions using my Product Response 1SCs as a common point of reference. I guess that's the benefit of having long-standing reference equipment. I noticed at the time that the SCM19s were a little bit cleaner and less coloured in the mid-range than my 1SCs, but with a tighter and considerably lighter bass and more recessed highs. I can therefore fairly confidently say that I think the SCM20s are just a more capable version of the SCM19s, but with more open highs. The sound staging and imaging abilities of the SCM20s is also excellent, on a par with my 1SCs, despite the 1SCs having much smaller cabinets. But you do need to take some care with setup and partnering equipment to get the best out of these speakers. The temptation is to place the ATC SCM20s close to walls to get more bass output through boundary reinforcement. Just note that if you're doing that, it comes considerably at the expense of sound staging and imaging. I think a much better option is to place them away from walls and add a subwoofer. I wound up with them about 120 centimeters from the wall behind them, measuring from the front baffle about 180 centimeters apart, with the speakers heavily toed in, pointing at my shoulders, and my listening position was approximately 2.4 meters away. For my American friends, those distances are 4, 6 and 8 feet respectively. ATC speakers have a reputation of not playing well at low volumes. The SCM20s are not bad. My Proax, the Quads and the Alta Audio Alessas all sound a little bit more engaging at low listening volumes. I'm talking about those late night sessions where the family's in bed and you're listening between 50 and 60 decibels. On the other side of the spectrum, you're more likely to damage your hearing before the SCM20s show any sign of dynamic compression. ATC speakers also have a rep for being fussy about amplification. I can confirm that my 1,950 pound Exposure 2510 struggled to keep the heavy midwoofer controlled to my satisfaction. The 6,670 pound Sugden Masterclass i4 felt more at ease despite only having 33 watts of Class A power. It has a soft bass, slightly withdrawn highs, but the mid-range is gloriously open, liquid smooth and textured like an oil-painted masterpiece. That's a combination that shouldn't work on paper, but it does as long as you understand the limitations. And that's the thing about the SCM20s, they impose very little character on the music itself. I guess that's why ATC speakers are popular amongst many of the world's top studios. They have this uncanny ability to just reflect the colours of the partner equipment you place around them, a bit like a chameleon. My Exposure 21 Pre and 18 Super monoblocks delivered the widest soundstage of any of the amplifiers I tried. The mid-range wasn't as rich and juicy as the Sugden, but micro details and subtleties in recordings were more apparent. In some ways I preferred the tighter bass and crisper mid-range transients delivered by my Hegel H400, even though the soundstage was diminished in size and there wasn't quite as much resolution and tonal texture on display. The Moon River 404 reference amplifier has just come in for review. This Swedish amplifier boasts a power supply with a whopping 107,000 microfarads of capacitance. It played nice with the SCM20s, review pending. As I've often found out, the robustness of the power supply is more of a consideration than outright wattage, although in an ideal world I'd like to have both. That's why something like the new Hegel H400 might be the ideal partner for the SCM20s. It's a shame that I had to go back to the distributor so soon after my review. The ATC SCM20s look and feel like they've been built to withstand shell bombardment. They play loud and clean, imparting very little character on the music. The drivers are the stars of the show, in particular the 150mm 6-inch SL midwoofer, unshackled here by the price constraints imposed on the SCM19s. It delivers a mid-range that is class leading. I'd pair with amplifiers with stiff power supplies and ideally lots of watts. The limited bass extension means that adding a subwoofer is essential in my opinion, but I'd love to see ATC put these very drivers into a larger cabinet to see how much more bass extension they could come up with. Who knows, they may be able to drag out an extra 10 Hz or so. That cabinet already exists and is used in the active SCM20s, where the bottom section is partitioned to house amplification. They may have to tweak the voice coil, spider or surround to deal with a lower impedance cabinet, but that shouldn't be too difficult. I doubt ATC will do that, but I can dream, can't I? What we have here is a speaker that has the best mid-range that I've heard in its class, a top end that isn't that far behind. Okay, the bass is a little bit light, but if you can accommodate a good quality, well-positioned subwoofer, you'll wind up with one of the finest speaker packages you can get for the money. The ATC SCM20s get a very highly recommended from this channel. My question for today is, if you could tweak one of your favorite hi-fi components, what would you change about them and why? Please let me know in the comments section. I'm sure you know what to do by now if you want to support me here and what I do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow Patreons. But for today, for now, a British audiophile, signing off.